All right. All right, we'll get started. Again, I'm Steve Winsky from CESMII, and Harry from Litmus. We'll be talking about 20 minutes here, and I'll go pretty quick. This little session is about how to work with CESMII on a funded project. So we'll start with who is CESMII. CESMII is Clean Energy Smart Manufacturing Innovation Institute, which is a mouthful. We are funded by the Department of Energy to help American manufacturing be more competitive by leveraging smart manufacturing technologies and also reduce energy uses in manufacturing. You can see we've been given a pretty sizable amount of money to help here. And we typically work with manufacturers, system integrators, software developers, academia, and machine builders. Some of our goals up at the top of the slide here, the left-hand corner, 15% improvement in energy efficiency in some high energy usage manufacturing type environments. One of our big goals is a 50% reduction in the time and cost to deploy smart manufacturing solutions to drive more industry adoption of smart manufacturing solutions. And kind of moving at a pretty good pace here. Again, multiple legs to what we do. And again, I already mentioned this one, but we actually co-fund projects, proof of concepts to drive 10 to 25% of energy usage in high energy usage manufacturing type environments, steel, cement, pulp and paper, thermal processing. We are driving some technology and standards technology, again, to drive the cost out of smart manufacturing solutions by using standard information profiles and things like that. That's about a 45-minute conversation in itself, so we can't go too deep there. And lastly, we do a lot to help upskill the workforce, training, education from frontline workers to executives, again, because the technology itself can only go so far if you don't have the right training for the right people to use the technology. So next slide. A little bit of animation in these slides. But again, I talked about we fund projects. There's multiple types of projects we fund. There's education and workforce development. Again, we do a lot with universities during building new curriculum and things like that, which is pretty interesting. We fund projects to kind of develop this core platform. We're building the Smart Manufacturing Innovation Platform. Again, that's a relatively lengthy conversation. The enabling R&D projects, again, those are typically those large energy reduction projects in steel and cement. Those are typically multi-million-dollar projects, and CESMII will typically co-fund 50% of those projects. So it might be a $2 million project. And again, CESMII, funded by the Department of Energy, will kick in half of that. A lot of the projects are innovation projects, and that's what Harry's going to speak to here in a few minutes. An innovation project is typically kind of a classic reduce energy usage, improve throughput, improve quality types of manufacturing applications based on some of the principles, leveraging smart profiles, leveraging the Smart Manufacturing Innovation Platform. So again, there's multiple types of projects that CESMII co-funds. And this is probably one of the key slides. It's not the prettiest slide in the world, but about every 12 to 15 months, CESMII will release an RFP, and this is the last one from June of last year. So you can kind of see some key dates there. We'll issue the proposal. Again, you can see in this proposal, we had 3 different types of projects that we're going to fund: enabling R&D, workforce development, platform capability, innovation projects. The number of projects we would potentially fund, the dollar amounts that we would dedicate to those projects. Then you can see right after we issue the proposal date, we'll have some informational webinars, Q&A type things. You have the deadline to submit your proposal. Then once the proposals are submitted, there's a very thorough rigor goes into selection. What are the right products to select? There's typically a team of 8 to 10 people that look at these. Typically, there's some CESMII leadership. Sometimes there are other CESMII members as well. And the Department of Energy reviews what we select. So it's a relatively thorough process. Then if you're selected, there's actually some T's and C's to be negotiated. I mean, the I's need to be dotted, the T's need to be crossed. I mean, these are, $200,000 projects on the low end, $2 million projects on the high end. So there's a lot of detail that needs to be worked out. But typically, you'll have a start date, and then the projects typically run from anywhere from 6 months to some cases 2 years. So this is what the process looks like. Probably in October is probably the next time that you're going to see a release of these an RFP for these projects. Again, in CESMII's history, we have 53 projects to date. 22 of them are completed, 25 are in process, 8 are going through the negotiations, the final set of negotiations before the project is actually kicked off. And you can see the breakdown on the types of projects as well. Again, this is what we call the cross-pollination process. One of the benefits of being part of CESMII is getting access to these projects. A majority of the intellectual property that comes from these co-funded projects is available to CESMII members. And this is a lot of the companies that have taken part of this process over the years. And typically, like a typical innovation project, that have a manufacturer, kind of the end user, which is looking to solve some type of manufacturing problem. There will be a system integrator or a software vendor or a university that works as a team on these projects. I'll turn it over to Harry.
Thank you, Steve. Like Steve mentioned, CESMII really helps organizations try to get into a more of an innovation cycle. So typically what happens is we would have a customer, but they really don't want to invest a lot of money up front. So what we do is we team together with the likes of CESMII. That gives us an opportunity to take some funding to that particular customer that fits the criteria what CESMII has put together that classifies us as an innovation project. So in our use case here, we took our technology, which is Litmus. We're an edge computing platform built specifically for manufacturers. So what we do within the platform is we call ourselves an IT/OT convergence platform. And the key part of how we enable that is we actually natively connect to machines and PLCs, CNC machines, sensor technologies, natively through our driver library. So to build a perspective around the number of drivers, right? So we have more number of drivers than Kepware and a couple other companies combined that are available day one to our customers. So what that enables is device connectivity. So with that, we can go to any manufacturing plant for any industry and connect to their assets natively. Once that data is in within the platform, we can then go ahead and start doing data transformations. We can start applying conditional logic. And this is all low code or no code. And that can happen at scale across an enterprise. And then once we have this data, we can build data models. Data models are important because that integrates into what CESMII is doing with the CESMII platform, where we can actually build a data model off a particular production process or a production machine and connect to it. So that's what we can do natively within our platform. And then from an extensibility perspective, we can actually deploy containerized applications within the platform. So from scaling out the solution, right? So the customer is never stuck with what we actually provide out of the box. The customer can actually extend the platform by using containerized technologies natively within the edge. Now, as we deploy these edge platforms, we can then manage them through the Litmus Edge Manager that is typically deployed in the cloud or in a local data center. So that's just the platform. And how we leverage this platform in one of the innovation studies that we did with CESMII is we had a manufacturer, it's a big tool manufacturer in the Midwest. what they did was they were running these tooling CNC machines all across their plants, but they didn't have a common platform to actually bring this data out and do something with that data, or actually even have some smarts built in so that they can actually start learning what their data, what their machines are actually doing. So what we did was we plugged in our Litmus Edge product right by the CNC in a little form factor gateway device, and we connected natively to that CNC machine. Once we had that data, we could now start working on the objectives, which were energy driven, which is reducing scrap, improving throughput, and overall improving the overall productivity. From a technical perspective, we leveraged our drivers that we have built in within the platform to be able to do that. Once we had access to this data, we could now work on the deliverables that were available, that we were in charge of for that particular project. One of the bigger things of that project was integrating with CESMII platform, right? So that's where we build the actual process model, and that's what we integrate our data into so that it starts feeding that process data for that particular machine into that particular model. The goal with the platform, the CESMII platform, is that once we've mapped out this production process, it can now be democratized across the board at different manufacturers that are leveraging or using the same process. Processes differ a little bit every company to company, but overall the goal being that we can give them a common data model that they can now work off of and use a technology like ours to actually feed data to it. So once we accomplish that, that really enabled us to generate about $160,000 worth of value that we can generate on a per year basis. And this is just one machine. They had about 110 different CNC centers in that one particular plant. So that kind of tells you the impact data monitoring and comparing to your previous historic data can bring to a particular manufacturer. Especially being an edge platform, that data was secure on the premises of the plant floor. So it didn't have to go to the cloud, it didn't have to reside in the data center. We could actually leverage that data within our platform and provide the customers the deliverables that they were hoping for. Now, the potential industry impact, I kind of talked about that a little bit, where we can actually use this model at different manufacturers. So that's what we're trying to do with CESMII as well, is building that partnership, proving out use cases, building the value, and then CESMII can give the platform to manufacturers to actually scale it out to other manufacturers that may be able to leverage the work that's already been performed. So that's the beauty of our joint collaboration with CESMII. Now, it's the benefits to CESMII, right? The information model, right? That's huge. That can be plugged in. But also, CESMII now starts becoming a central repository of these processes across the board that customers can come and leverage and understand that they do not need to perform these POCs all across the board again and again if they can learn something from this. So that's a huge time save. And that's where we're investing the resources and the money that's needed to prove it out so that we're not stuck in these endless POCs at every customer that needs to prove it out. From a success metric perspective, this was kind of the breakdown of the different deliverables that we were able to achieve. And this is where that $160,000 number that came up is. These are projections based on what we could do within a span of about 3 to 4 months with that particular customer. That's about it. I'm open to any questions that you may have about the platform or what we did, anything special with CESMII or went through the validation process or anything in general that you want to chat about.
What kind of data transformation are you guys capable of doing data in the labs?
I'm going to wait for the mic so that everybody can hear your question.
Is this thing on? All right, good. What type of data transformation are you natively capable of doing within the platform?
Yeah, so what we do within the platform is once we connect to a machine, and we can connect to 260 different types of drivers, right? So the challenge that creates is data format, because every machine gives us data in their own format. So what we do is a native transformation or normalization of that data into a standard JSON. So once that data is available in a standard format, now we can actually transform that data into essentially any JSON model that you want to build And you can start building models from a plant level down to a cell level natively within the Edge platform. So we've built asset modeling capabilities that are mostly all JSON data modeling. It's basically a structured JSON that you can build.
So it's based on signals.
Oh. It can be based on ETL as well. So let's say if you already have an information model, we can actually create a data model within the platform that can actually report to it in its own format that it wants to.
Gotcha. So basically, it's still kind of single, kind of like one data source at a time, right? That's
No, I mean, you can work off of multiple data sources. You can have an Allen Bradley PLC or a Siemens PLC. We can bring data in from multiple sources and combine them into one model.
okay. So you can actually do an ETL process. You can do a join. You can do clean, transform, all that feature engineering.
100%. Yeah, think of us as an aggregator, right?
Yeah.
Once we have this data available within the platform, we can plug and place it anywhere within that data model or the infrastructure, or even communicate with different enterprise systems across the board.
Gotcha. That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? So 2 questions. One, first, the native data. So you said it's going to be different, because different machine languages. So is there a standard that's used for those machines where you're pulling the data from? Second question is, you're talking about data out. Can you talk more about data back into the machine or from machine to machine?
No, 100%. So once we connect to a data source, it could be essentially any data source. The basic format of that data within our platform is normalized into a standard JSON structure. So every machine data point will look and feel the same as soon as you connect to it. Now you can take that and transform it to whatever you need it to be. So that's the normalization piece. Second is the integration. So we can integrate with cloud systems natively. We can push data to any cloud. We're cloud agnostic, we're hardware agnostic. Once you push this data to a cloud, let's say you're running an ML model up there, and you receive feedback from that model, you can push it back to the edge instance, and the edge instance can then have the logic built within it that actually executes based on whatever the feedback from that model is, where you can actually say, if you need to reduce the speed of something, you can actually write back to the PLC if you need to.
Layer of data. Just so I'm clear, so you're like the layer of data above the equipment line, right?
Yes.
It's not directly. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
typically we'll start implementing our product from layer 2 of the Purdue model upwards, so that we can start capturing that data and integrate with any systems horizontally or vertically through the Purdue model.
Any other questions? Who else?
You guys are good.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering, what is the most typical communication method that you have for the end results of this to your customers? Are they usually looking at it as like some type of graphical visualization, or is it alerting? If you just speak to that a little bit, because I want to get that clear in my mind.
Yeah, 100%. So customers range from a spectrum of, we don't have any data, we're doing pen and paper data calculations, or we're going to the PLC and doing a CSV dump. Or you have customers that are really advanced, that have actually built ML models that are integrated within their edge. So you'll find a whole spectrum. But the most common is, I have data from my work cells. They're all different silos. Different people are managing this data, but the organization itself doesn't have visibility into that information. So what we start doing at that point is we start connecting the assets and building the information model locally at the edge that can now be integrated into cloud systems or any databases that the customer wants to push this data into. And we're not a data visualization platform, because that's where we decided not to invest our efforts, because there's tons of data visualization platforms out there that can connect to any database. So as long as the data resides in a database or it resides in a data lake somewhere, it can be connected to and visualized however that the customer likes.
Any other questions? Anybody? Questions? Come on. Somebody's got one.
Is your system entirely a software, or you also have hardware components?
Yeah, no, we're hardware agnostic. So if I were to give you a baseline, I mean, we can install on down gateways, HPE, doesn't matter. From a deployment perspective, we can be, Litmus Edge is a hardened OS. So it will be the native OS on a hardware device. So you don't need a baseline Windows or Linux system to maintain from an IT perspective. So we'll be the OS. We can also be deployed as a virtual machine and as a Docker container as well. So that gives our customers a breadth of capabilities on how they can deploy Edge on their plant floors.
Thank you.
I just thought of this. So, are your customers mostly using like your employees and your expertise to help build these models? Or I know you said you have a range of customers. So, do you have some that rely on you to kind of get the models set up and created, and then some that are like, we want to get in there and develop our own models?
Yeah, so it's a combination. Typically, us being a software organization, we're not deep into services. Though what we do recommend to customers is we do client number one together, so that we can either train the SI that's working on the account or train your own internal teams that are going to actually implement the platform. So we do typically plant 1.5 type implementations. Basically share our best practices, set up the system the way it's supposed to be. And then at that point, the customer can train their own people because it's a low code, no code platform. So it's basically drag and drop workflows that you can build. So it's easy for the customer to onboard their own people. So from a cost of ownership, we're very low cost of ownership and a very fast time to value solution.
I got time for one more question. One more? Anybody? Come on, somebody's got one more. All right, let's hear it for Harry Grewal from Litmus and Steve Winsky from CESMII for a great presentation.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.